we go. So, the Kakacupama Sutta, Simile of the Saw. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One, the Buddha, was living at Savatthi, at Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park. If you're not familiar with the suttas, you'll hear this many of the suttas. Maybe not a majority, but many were take place in this place where the Buddha often stayed, especially towards the last years of his life. And so this Anathapindika is an interesting person. He was one of the chief benefactors of the Sangha. And he was basically the Bill Gates of, or at least as far much as I can approximate, the Bill Gates of the Buddha's day. He was extremely rich. He was probably the richest man in this area. But like Bill Gates, or at least as far as I can tell, Bill Gates is quite a philanthropist. I might be wrong. I just know from what I have read. But this Anathapindika actually got his name. Anathapindika means giving to the poor, basically. So he basically was given a nickname because of his actions in the city and how he helped. He gave to people and helped out. So this is, and this was even before he knew the Buddha. So this is a very generous man with his time and his money and his compassion. So that's a little bit of an aside from this, but since Anathapindika is a fairly well-known, and if you actually read the suttas, you'll hear the name often, I figured I'd introduce that. So now on that occasion, the Venerable Malya Paguna was associating overmuch with bhikkhunis. Bhikkhunis are the female monastics. Bhikkhus are male monastics and bhikkhunis are female monastics. So this is a bhikkhu who is associating too much with the female bhikkhunis, the female monastics. He was associating so much with bhikkhunis that if any bhikkhu spoke dispraise of those bhikkhunis in his presence, he would become angry and displeased and would make a case of it. And if any bhikkhu spoke dispraise of the Venerable Malya Paguna in those bhikkhunis' presence, they would become angry and displeased and would make a case of it. So much was the Venerable Malya Paguna associating with bhikkhunis. Right off the top of the bat, you can think about how we kind of create barriers of us and them, right? When you come to know somebody, when you come to become very close to somebody, you become friends with them. We automatically have this. It's part of our human nature that we we easily see the faults of people we don't like, and it takes us and we quickly defend the faults of people we do like. So this is, if somebody said anything about the bhikkhunis, Bhante Malya Paguna would get angry and say, "You can't say that," and vice versa, right? So then a certain bhikkhu went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and told the Blessed One what was taking place. Then the Blessed One addressed a certain bhikkhu thus: "Come, bhikkhu, tell the bhikkhu Malya Paguna in my name that the teacher calls him." "Yes, Venerable Sir," he replied. And he went to the Venerable Malya Paguna and told him, "The teacher calls you friend Paguna." "Yes, friend," he replied. And he went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, sat down to one side. The Blessed One asked him, "Paguna, Is it true that you are associating overmuch with bhikkhunis? That you are associating so much with bhikkhunis that if a bhikkhu speaks dispraise of those bhikkhunis in your presence, you become angry and displeased and make a case of it. And if a bhikkhu speaks dispraise of you in those bhikkhunis' presence, they become angry and displeased and make a case of it. Are you associating so much with bhikkhunis as it seems? Yes, Venerable Sir. Paguna, are you not a clansman who has gone forth out of faith from the home life into homelessness? Yes, Venerable Sir. Paguna, it is not proper for you, a clansman, gone forth out of faith from home life into homelessness, to associate overmuch with bhikkhunis. Therefore, if anyone speaks dispraise of those bhikkhunis in your presence, you should abandon any desires and any thoughts based on the household life. And herein you should train yourself. My mind will be unaffected, and I shall utter no evil words. I shall abide compassionate for his welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. That is how you should train, Paguna. So the Buddha is giving a training lesson. The Buddha is giving a teaching how you want to deal with a situation like this. Just as it's in the suttas, it's well established that bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are not really supposed to be very overly sociable and going to because when you leave the household life, there's many things that you leave behind. And you're supposed to be developing seclusion and practicing and learning the Dhamma and all these kinds of things. That doesn't mean that you are totally secluded from people, but you also don't go out to the club and go out to dinner and all these kind of things either. So if you spend too much time, then this is where attachments grow, and this is where basically troubles start with the mind. So this is why the Buddha is saying, if you hear this dispraise, if somebody is dispraising the bhikkhunis, whether it's true or whether it's not, that should not be a situation where you let your mind go to anger and you do unskillful actions. It's not necessarily saying that you don't do any actions, but the Buddha is concentrating here, is focusing here on the state of the mind. My mind will be unaffected, and I shall utter no evil words. I shall abide compassionate for his welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. And even if you have to, even if you do have to admonish somebody or defend somebody, it's better to do that without a mind full of anger. Of course, that's not easy in our daily life, right? We usually, if we have to admonish somebody, if we have to correct somebody, excuse me, if we have to correct somebody, it's usually because we're angry at them and we want them to know that they're wrong and all these kind of things. This is especially troublesome at work, right? If you have to go and explain to somebody, oh, you're wrong, or this was done wrong, etc. It's very easy for this to turn into like an emotional, ill will filled situation. But we practice before we get into these kind of situations. We practice what the Buddha taught us here. I shall utter no evil words, abide compassionate. Make sure that my mind is full of metta instead of ill will before I do anything. And so that's going to be very important as we go along here in the sutta. If anyone gives those bhikkhunis a blow with his hand, with a clod, with a stick, or with a knife in your presence, you should abandon any desires and thoughts based on the household life. And herein you should train thus: my mind will be unaffected, and I shall utter no evil words. I shall abide compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. This is how you should train. And so we went from just words, now we've moved into actions. This is seeing somebody get hurt, physically hurt. But even still, whatever actions of defense or whatever actions that you need to perform, you want to make sure that you have to practice that your mind does not get caught up in ill will and aversion. And the reason for this is because when you have a mind of ill will, you have a clouded mind. You can't think clearly. You can't think mindfully. And when you have a mind that you can't think clearly, well, then your actions will follow likewise. Your actions will stem from a mind that is clouded. And that, I hesitate to say always, even though I do think it's always. But maybe I'll say almost always, just to cover myself. That almost always is bad. That almost always leads to making the situation worse than better. So we've gone from somebody being somebody admonishing verbally to somebody attacking physically and somebody else. And we continue. If anyone should give you a blow with his hand, with a clod, with a stick, or with a knife, you should abandon any desires and any thoughts based on the household life. And herein you should train thus: my mind will be unaffected, and I shall utter no evil words. I shall abide compassionate for his welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. That is how you should train Pagulu. It's getting tougher and tougher, isn't it? The levels of the training are getting deeper or higher. And again, as I want to point out, is that these are ideals to train towards. This is not that I just started meditating a year ago, and now somebody attacks me with a knife, and I'm going to be totally without ill will for them. That's not realistic. But we can train towards that goal. So this is what the Buddha is saying. This is an ideal for you to work towards. Doesn't mean it's easy. And it doesn't mean that it's not complicated. The Buddha said that this practice goes against the stream. And of course, if you're attacked physically by nature, by the survival of this species is to act in some way in self-defense, whether it's running or fighting. And in many ways, this anger bringing up is part of that survival mechanism, which is why it's instant and it comes up. This person's attacking me. How dare they? Well, I'm going to do this. So it's a part of the ideal of this practice, but we're not even halfway through yet. Then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, there was an occasion when the bhikkhus satisfied my mind. Here I address the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, I eat a single session. He's saying he eats one meal a day. By doing so, I am free from illness and affliction, and I enjoy lightness, strength, and a comfortable abiding. Come, bhikkhus, eat at a single session. By doing so, you will be free from illness and affliction, and you will enjoy lightness, strength, and a comfortable abiding. And I had no need to keep on instructing those bhikkhus. I had only to arouse mindfulness in them. Suppose there were a chariot on even ground at the crossroads, harnessed to thoroughbreds, waiting with gold lying ready, so that a skilled trainer, a charioteer of horses to be tamed, might mount it, and taking the reins in his left hand and the goad in his right hand, might drive out and back by any road whenever he likes. So too I had no need to keep instructing those bhikkhus. I had only to arouse mindfulness in them. So he's explaining that these bhikkhus are well-practiced bhikkhus and they're following the path correctly. So he didn't have to give them a lot of instruction, just a little bit, like a little course correction, a little guidance. And he knew that they would take that instruction and include that as part of their practice. So he continues, therefore, bhikkhus, abandon what is unwholesome and devote yourselves to wholesome states. For that is how you will come to growth, increase, and fulfillment in this Dhamma and discipline. What is an unwholesome and a wholesome and an unwholesome state? These are states of mind. Unwholesome states: anger, hatred, ill will, covetousness, greed. All these states of mind that lead to your harm and the harm of others, that are not skillful. Oh, and the opposite. What's a wholesome state? What's a skillful state? Mind states of letting go, of not grasping and clinging. Mind states of goodwill, of metta. Mind states of compassion. These are skillful mind states. And these are the states that the Buddha exhorts us to abide in, even in the toughest times. But as you can see, he's saying here, this is how you practice. He's not saying this is how you should be, and if you're not, you're a really bad Buddhist. He's giving the guidelines of practicing. This is the best way to be, and this is how you get there. And if you notice, even the example of him talking to the bhikkhus about eating, he's not saying, well, I eat one meal a day, so you should eat one meal a day. He's saying, I eat one meal a day. These are the benefits. Come and eat one meal a day. Try it out for yourself. See see these benefits for yourself. Okay. Then we have a simile here. Suppose there were a big sala tree grove near a village or a town, and it was choked with castor oil weeds. And some man would appear desiring its good welfare and protection. He would cut down and throw out the crooked saplings that robbed the sap. And he would clean up the interior of the grove and tend the straight, well-formed saplings, so that the solitary grove later would come to growth, increase, and fulfillment. So too, bhikkhus, abandon what is unwholesome and devote yourselves to wholesome states, for that is how you will come to growth, increase, and fulfillment in this Dhamma and discipline. So the Buddha gives you his exhortation, and then to help you understand, he gives you a simile. And this is this person desiring the good and the welfare and the protection of the tree would cut down these saplings and clean up. This is the practice. This is the work. Right? This is the simile. You're practicing that one day that you're practicing getting rid of the things, the defilements, practicing letting go of these unwholesome states, so that this tree will grow well, so that your practice will grow well. You come to growth, increase, and fulfillment in this Dhamma and discipline. Now we come to the one of the most famous parts of this sutta, at least one of the more well-known parts. It's a story about Mistress Vedahika. Formerly bhikkhus, in this same Savatthi, there was a housewife named Vedahika. And a good report about Mistress Vedahika had spread thus. Mistress Vedahika is gentle. Mistress Vedahika is meek. Mistress Vedahika is peaceful. Now Mistress Vedahika had a maid named Kali, who was clever, nimble, and neat in her work. The maid Kali thought, a good report about my lady has been spread thus. Mistress Vedahika is gentle, she is meek, she is peaceful. How is it now, while she does not show anger, is it nevertheless actually present in her, or is it absent? So this servant Kali is wondering, is my mistress really this peaceful? Or is it just a facade? Is it just on the outside? And so she decides to have some fun with this. Suppose I test my lady. So the maid Kali got up late. Then Mistress Vedahika said, Hey, Kali, what is it, madam? She said. What is the matter that you get up so late? Kali says, Nothing is the matter, madam. Nothing is the matter, you wicked girl, yet you get up so late. And she was angry and displeased, and she scowled. Then the maid Kali thought, the fact is that while my lady does not show anger, it is actually present in her, not absent. And it is just because my work is neat that my lady shows no anger, though it is actually present in her, not absent. And so what do you do next? Suppose I test my lady a little more. So the maid Kali got up later in the day. Then the mistress Vedika said, "Hey, Kali, what is it, madam? What is the matter that you get up later in the day?" "Nothing is the matter, madam. Nothing is the matter, you wicked girl. Yet you get up later in the day." And she was angry and displeased, and she spoke words of displeasure. Then the maid Kali thought, "The fact is that while my lady does not show anger, it is actually present in her, not absent. And it is just because that my work is neat that my lady shows no anger, though it is actually present in her, not absent. Suppose I test my lady a little more." This reminds me of, while not a parent, I did help raise my nephew, and I've been around children the last 20 years and work and everything. This always reminds me of like how little kids will always test adults, like just to test to see how far they can go. So I always get a little giggle every time I read this. Okay, so the maid Kali got up even later in the day. Then the mistress Vedehika said, "Hey, Kali, what is it, madam? What is the matter that you get up even later in the day?" "Nothing is the matter, madam. Nothing is the matter, you wicked girl. Yet you get up still later in the day." And she was angry and displeased. And she took a rolling pin, gave Kali a blow on the head, and cut her head. Then the maid Kali, with blood running from her cut head, denounced her mistress to the neighbors. "See, ladies, this gentle lady's work. See, ladies, this meek lady's work. See, ladies, this peaceful lady's work. How can she become angry and displeased with her only maid for getting up late? How can she take a rolling pin, give her a blow on the head, and cut her head?" Then later a bad report about Mistress Vedehika spread thus: "Mistress Vedehika is rough. Mistress Vedehika is violent. Mistress Vedehika is merciless." So at the beginning of the story, it was all Mistress Vedika is such peaceful and kind and nice, but when pushed to really bring out the ill will and aversion, she wasn't quite so nice, was she? And of course, we can read this and we can think, well, I mean, of course, like if somebody drove, we all have breaking points. Of course, I think most people's breaking points would have to be pretty high to bash somebody over the head. But in terms of the yelling and in terms of the getting angry, we all have these breaking points. Some of us have a stronger breaking point than others. Um, you know, most people probably wouldn't get too angry over minor stuff. But as that gets ramped up, as Kali continues to press the buttons and prod and do her, as Rolo said, scientific inquiry, how far can you go? And so, again, this is talking about the practice. This is giving an ideal. Yes. But does the pond send back a tsunami at the person who threw the pebble? That is the the question. So we'll continue. So too bhikkhus. Some bhikkhu is extremely gentle, extremely meek, extremely peaceful, so long as disagreeable courses of speech do not touch him. But it is when disagreeable courses of speech touch him that it can be understood whether that bhikkhu is really kind and gentle. This is not only just for somebody else on the outside, this is for you as well. Right? You can understand how your mind reacts to things by how your mind reacts to things, what you have in your mind. There's a monk, Ajahn Brahm, and he tells a funny story about in his early years when he was a monk in Thailand, meditating in the jungle, and he had this meditative experience, and he thought he became enlightened, he became awakened, and so for this long period of time, like half a morning or whatever, he's like, oh, I don't feel any attachment or aversion. I must be awakened. I've had this wonderful experience. And then something happened to the point where he got tested, and then he noticed greed and ill will in his mind, and then he said, "Oh, okay, no, I'm not. I'm not awakened. I just thought I was." So this is how you can see by your reaction in your mind how something like disagreeable speech, somebody curses you out. How does your mind react to that, and how does your speech and your physical actions flow from your mind reacting to that? Right? So that is actually practicing. You can, if you're aware of that, you're seeing what is happening, and the more you can see what is happening, the more you have a choice and a chance to make sure that you rein in. You can notice, well, yeah, okay, this has caused me anger, but I can let that go. I don't need to lash out back, tit for tat. Of course, that's not easy, but that's the practice. And so you can know, well, I'm just not there yet. This person said this, and I got angry and I said something right back. It's okay. In many ways, that's normal. That's just the normal mind of that we have, this human mind, that somebody attacks us, whether it's physically or socially or whatever. We need to have justice to fight back. Anger with anger, right? In the first section of the Dhammapada, the Buddha says that hatred cannot be allayed by hatred. Only by non-hatred can hatred be allayed. This is an eternal law, or an ancient law. So if you fight fire with fire, eventually you're not going to get anywhere with it. You might seem like you got somewhere in the short term, but in the long term, it doesn't do anything. It creates more fire. It creates worse situation. So, we'll continue here. I do not call a bhikkhu easy to admonish. Who is easy to admonish? And makes himself easy to admonish only for the sake of getting robes, alms food, a resting place, and medical requisites. Easy admonishing is basically a monk is supposed to be easy to admonish. It means if somebody points out a valid flaw, a valid um, issue, you don't who are you to tell me this? These kind of things. You say, oh, well, thank you, and you examine the validity of that admonishment. You say, well, maybe this person's right. Maybe I was wrong and I needed somebody to point it out. And so the Buddha's saying here, just because some people make themselves easy to admonish to get things, robes, alms, food, resting place, medical, medicinal requisites, etc. Why is that? Because that bhikkhu is not easy to admonish, nor make himself easy to admonish when he gets no robes, alms, food, and resting place, and medicinal requisites. But when a bhikkhu is easy to admonish and makes himself easy to admonish because he honors, respects, and reveres the Dhamma, him I call easy to admonish. Therefore, bhikkhus, you should train thus. We shall be easy to admonish and make ourselves easy to admonish because we honor, respect, and revere the Dhamma. Where am I here? Okay, here we go. This is how you should train. So we still have a good amount of this sutta left, and we got only about 20 minutes. I'm going to probably pick up the pace a little bit. Um, so here the Buddha continues. Bhikkhus, there are these 5 courses of speech that others may use when they address you. Their speech may be timely or untimely, true or untrue, gentle or harsh, connected with good or with harm, spoken with a mind of loving kindness or with inner hate. When others address you, their speech may be timely or untimely. When others address you, their speech may be true or untrue. When others address you, their speech may be gentle or harsh. When others address you, their speech may be connected with good or with harm. When others address you, their speech may be spoken with a mind of loving kindness or with inner hate. Herein, bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our minds will be unaffected. We shall utter no evil words. We shall abide compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness without inner hate. And so again, this is the Buddha saying, no matter what they say to you, this is how you should practice. And he goes into this is the most common instructions of metta in the suttas. Hundreds of times, maybe not hundreds, at least many dozens of times, you see this in the suttas. So he says, we shall abide, pervading that person with a mind imbued with loving kindness. And starting with him, we shall abide, pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train bhikkhus. So you are actively practicing metta for this person. And with that metta, you expand it to all beings. It's very, very few places, only not even a handful of places in thousands of pages of the sutta where the Buddha speaks about giving metta to a specific person. Buddha almost always speaks about giving metta to all beings in the all-encompassing world. But there are some specific instances where he does say to start with somebody with metta before moving to all beings. And there's another sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya called the removal of aversion, or the removal of annoyance. And this is specifically dealing with if you are dealing with somebody who with whom strong aversion has arisen in your mind. There's 5 ways to work with that. The first 3 are 3 of the 4 what we call Brahma Viharas. The first is metta. So the first thing to do is to practice metta for that person. And then just like here, go then expanding it. The second thing to do is to practice karuna. Karuna is compassion. Trying to be empathetic and understanding of the person, have compassion for the person. Barring that, the third thing is equanimity. Developing an equanimous mind. A mind that you don't like the person, but you don't hate the person either. You don't have your mind is not diving into aversion and hatred for that person. And if that doesn't work, the next one is to try to ignore that person, avoid that person, have nothing to do with that person. And if that doesn't work, like say because you live with the person, the 5th one is to remind yourself that they are a being in samsara that is subject to their karma. That whatever they're doing is harming themselves, just like whatever you do in these kind of situations. When you are harmful to somebody else, you're also harmful to yourself. When you're harmful to yourself, oftentimes that also spills out to being harmful to somebody else. So this is the importance of practicing metta. The reason we practice metta is for this purpose, the eradication of ill will. So, Bhikkhu, suppose a man came with a hoe and a basket and said, I shall make this great earth to be without earth. He would dig here and there, strew the soil here and there, spit here and there, and urinate here and there, saying, be without earth, be without earth. What do you think, bhikkhus? Could that man make this great earth be without earth? Well, no, venerable sir. Why is that? Because this great earth is deep and immeasurable. It is not easy to make it be without earth. Eventually, the man would reap only weariness and disappointment. So too, bhikkhus, there are these 5 courses of speech, as said before. And herein, bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and starting with him, we shall abide pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind similar to the earth, abundant, exalted, and immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train. So the Buddha is giving a pretty interesting simile there. The vastness, the immeasurableness of the great earth. That is like what our metta should be for beings. Suppose a man came with crimson, turmeric, indigo, or carmine and said, I shall draw pictures and make pictures appear on empty space. What do you think, bhikkhus? Could that man draw pictures and make pictures appear on empty space? No, venerable sir. Why is that? Because empty space is formless and non-manifestive. It is not easy to draw pictures there or make pictures appear there. Eventually that man would reap only weariness and disappointment. So do bhikkhus, there are these 5 courses of speech. Herein you should train thus. Our mind shall remain unaffected, etc., etc. And we shall pervade the all-encompassing world with a mind uh, imbued, a mind similar to empty space, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility or ill will. This is how we should train. Bhikkhu, suppose a man came with a blazing grass torch and said, I shall heat up and burn away the river Ganges with this blazing grass torch. What do you think, bhikkhus? Could that man heat up and burn away the river Ganges with the blazing grass torch? No, venerable sir. Why is that? Because the river Ganges is deep and immense. It is not easy to heat up or burn it away with a blazing grass torch. Eventually the man would reap only weariness and disappointment. So to bhikkhus there are these 5 courses of speech. Herein, etc., our minds will remain unaffected, and starting with him, we shall abide the all-encompassing world with a mind similar to the river Ganges, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill wills. That is how you should train. Again, as always, this is always a training practice. This is the Buddha's giving instructions on how we should handle these kind of situations, these hard situations in life. So he continues, Bhikkhus, suppose there were a catskin bag that was rubbed, thoroughly well rubbed, soft, silky, rid of rustling, rid of crackling, and a man came with a stick or a potsherd and said, there is this catskin bag that is rubbed, rid of rustling, of crackling. I shall make it rustle and crackle. What do you think, bhikkhus? Could that man make it rustle and crackle with the stick or the potsherd? No, venerable sir. Why is that? Because the catskin bag being rubbed, etc., rid of rustling, rid of crackling, is not easy to make it rustle or crackle. Eventually the man would reap only weariness and disappointment. So to bhikkhus there are these 5 courses of speech that others may use when they address you. The speech may be timely or untimely, true or untrue, gentle or harsh, connected with good or connected with harm, spoken with a mind of loving kindness or with inner hate. When others address you, their speech may be timely or untimely, etc. So this is the last one, so it goes through all of them again. I'm not going to go through all of that. Okay, so we shall abide pervading that person with a mind imbued with loving kindness. And starting with him, we shall abide pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind similar to a catskin bag, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility or ill will. And so we come to the most well-known and the most famous part of this simile, of this sutta. It's also, we've been ramping up, right? We started from words. We've been ramping up the difficulty. We're leveling up as we go through this sutta. And here is the highest level. Bhikkhus, even if bandits were to sever you savagely limb by limb with a 2-handled saw, he who gave rise to a mind of hate towards them would not be carrying out my teaching. Herein, bhikkhus, you should train thus. Our mind will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. Kind of hard, right? Could you imagine being sawed limb by limb and uttering no evil words, having no ill will? Again, this is the highest level. This is the ideal to strive for. We are not there yet. And it's okay. That's perfectly normal. But this is the highest practice of metta that the Buddha exhorts us to train towards, to practice. We shall abide compassionate for their welfare. So instead of having hatred towards the people doing this to us, we have compassion for them. understanding, empathy. We have goodwill for them, even though they're doing this horrendous thing to us. With a mind of loving kindness without inner hate, we shall abide pervading them with a mind imbued with loving kindness, and starting with them, we shall abide pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train bhikkhus. Bhikkhus, if you keep this advice on the simile of the saw constantly in your mind, do you see any course of speech, trivial or gross, that you could not endure? No, venerable sir. Therefore, bhikkhus, you should keep this advice on the simile and the saw constantly in your mind. That will lead to your welfare and happiness for a long time. That is what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's word. And that is the end of this sutta. So, one thing I guess that is an often question regarding this is, the simile of the saw is supposed to be a simile, and it's not necessarily supposed to be, like an arahant might be able to do this, or somebody extremely advanced might be able to do this, but we wouldn't be able to do this. But it's something to work towards. But that's also, I guess to finish this off, I'll speak a little bit about the and this sutta is often used in this mindset as thinking that Buddha is telling us to be, what's the word, either pacifist or to kind of let it happen, or these kind of things. Even in the monastic rules, the Buddha did allow for the monks to defend themselves from attack. So long as obviously we are not trying to hurt the person in that defense. So the Buddha is talking in this sutta about the mind. No matter what your action, and really he's talking about, either in the end you can see he's summing it up. Even if you had goodwill even while you were being sawed, do you think there's anything somebody could say that would bring you ill will? And they're like, well, no, because compared to being sawed in pieces, somebody saying something to you is not that big of a deal. Let's see. Do you feel that it is more difficult for Westerners to cultivate this mindset of metta due to our social conditioning, which is focused more on the individual than the greater community? No. No, I don't think that at all. I think that maybe we have, depending on your conditioning, there's certain aspects that are a little tougher, maybe. But I don't. Well, actually, that's your kind of question. But I think of like the opposite way, right? Think about a community, a culture where the individual is not stressed at all. There's no metta for the individual either. When I teach my metta, I use the words all of us. Because when the Buddha is talking about metta, the Buddha is not saying just for these people, not yourself. He's also saying not just for you and not everybody else. It's for all of us. So, if we leave one part out, well then we're leaving part of the equation out. The equation is all beings. everywhere, as we've heard multiple times during the sutta. So, um, I also question the whole focus on the individual thing too, because what I find is that in teaching Westerners is that it's really hard for them to give metta to themselves. I find that people don't like themselves, and they actually kind of use the excuse of helping others to avoid helping themselves. They lose themselves in others. They have a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever that they can take care of or work on, and not work on themselves. Let me see here. Reading. Yeah, bro. And I think one of the other misconceptions people have is this, like, this kind of, the practice makes you into like a robot. I think until you're a very, very advanced being, until you're almost an awakened being, you're going to have some level of um, attachment and aversion in your mind. But can say from my own experience, um, unless in really, really extreme situations, uh, you can notice when you practice, and if you've been practicing for a time, you can see when the anger comes, and you can let it go. You can depersonalize it. You notice, okay, this anger has arisen, and you can then go over the choices. Well, I can just go with the flow, let my inner Hulk come out, and start being angry and smashing and doing all kinds of stuff. I can, uh, if I'm not quite advanced enough, but I'm advanced enough to see and to make a choice, I can do the best that I can to fight it. Not, I can see the anger, but I'm not going to allow myself to um, to have it flow out into my words and my physical action. And then when you get to another point, you can see the anger come up, and you can say, and you can understand it and see it and observe it and say, you know what? I don't have to identify with this. I don't have to follow it along. I can just let it go. And then I guess a higher level, a level where I'm not at, so I'm just kind of I'm kind of thinking about this, and maybe I don't know what the word is. Um, Having an educated guess based on my experience, where the thought comes, but you don't even have to use any words. You don't even have to even think about it, that you don't have to identify with it. You just don't. It's just a thought. It comes and it goes, and you have not even put an ounce of mental energy towards that thought. So you don't even, there's not even a split second of ill will that would arise. It just arises and it goes, and you didn't attach to it at all. So, as you get through the practice, you're able to gain the ability, the wisdom to see things as they're arising and then make a decision. And you want to make the decision, obviously, that leads to your benefit and the benefit of others, that doesn't make things worse. Dar, are you saying that people think it's easier to stay in the hole than working hard to get out of it? Because this is stay in that anger and working hard to get out of it. I want to clarify your statement, make sure I know.
Sorry, this is why I use voice instead of typing. Um, but I think I was trying to say that it's easy to stay miserable and stay in that anger because it's hard work to try and climb out of that, to get out of it. It's easier to just sometimes it's easier to just stay in that miserable anger that you are in.
That's
That
true.
kind of thing.
Anger
Yeah.
can feel very good, especially like this, where you feel like what's it called? What's that anger called? Where it's like like your righteous anger, like like a superhero about to bring down the righteous justice to the bad guy who made you angry. These kind of things. Um, so yeah, anger, and again, it's kind of the 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 the, the genetics of this body has created that. So this is, it's supposed to feel that way. And this is why you go with the flow, and then just kind of everything. Over the years, I worked with people who had lots of really strong anger issues, and it was very very hard to even have for these people to even have the basic control. These are people who end up beating their spouses and getting into fights and you know fighting police and all these kind of things. And that's on the extreme end of it, I would say. Um, and sometimes though anger is pointing to something that maybe you'd like to change, or maybe you feel maybe it's something has to happen, something has to change. But the important thing to do though is to not act while you have that anger. If you act while you have anger, you're acting with a clouded mind, and you're not going to do something that's going to be beneficial. You're going to make things worse. So you can notice, okay, I'm angry. This is the reason. You examine the situation. Okay, this needs to change. Then you think about with mindfulness and a clear mind. You think, well, this is what should be done, and I can guarantee you that that will be a much better and a much useful course of action than the action done when you're angry. Anger is a prison. Anger is the I mean, I guess now because recently I've had lots of situations that have brought up some a strong aversion in me that I haven't had to deal with in a long, long time. Now that I see it, now that I have more of an awareness of my mind, I really see how horrible it is to have a mind that's full of anger and aversion and ill will. It's really, really horrible. It's just a heavy, horrible mind that feels like a prison. And I think back to all the people I worked with over the years when I did, social work, child protective services, and stuff like that. The people who lived like that because they didn't know any other way. They didn't know how to get out of that anger. I can't imagine living like that 24/7. It's a horrible, horrible situation. And so now these days for me, like the anytime I have a mind like that, I just want to do what I can do to have that subside. That's practicing metta, letting go, not not personalizing the thoughts that arise, all of these kind of things. Just doing whatever I can do to allow to have that mind state subside, because it's horrible to live with. And while I'm in that mind state, I don't trust my actions, because I don't want to make an action because I know that it won't be a skillful one. So, yes, it's important to acknowledge it and to let it go. I don't know how skillful it is to think of it as an actual entity. Um, I don't really have much to say about that either way. Uh, I I see it more as just a process, right? And these days, I'm starting to understand and starting to see dependent origination a little bit better, and seeing how we set the groundwork for what comes up in our mind in the future. So when anger arises, well, we set the groundwork for that, because throughout our life, when a situation like this happened, we got angry, you know. And if a situation happens and we have peace and we abide in goodwill, well, we set the groundwork for that too. We practice metta. Through the hard times, we practiced. We kept practicing, and it's paid off. So it's past time. Um, if anybody feels like they need to go, they can go. There's no need to stay. If you have to go, it's okay. I'm getting a little tired, so I'm gonna probably start wrapping this up myself. But if anybody has any final questions or comments, we'll still continue to talk here for a bit. Well, that's why with metta, it starts out small. Metta starts out with just some repetition of words, right? And it builds. Like, this is how most people teach. Most people teach metta using some kind of words, using some kind of visuals, and then it builds from that, where it moves to a feeling. And then if you abide in that feeling, and then you practice um, while you're out and about. You practice giving metta to other people. One of the ways we do that here, like if we're walking on the street, on the road, everybody does walks here, and we wave at the people who are driving by and we give metta to them. So that's practicing. Doing good things for people is practicing metta. Following the precepts, living by virtuous principles is practicing metta. Following the Eightfold Path is practicing metta. It's living metta, because you're practicing living a life that is beneficial to you, because it's cleansing your mind and changing you, and that means it's also beneficial to the people around you as well. So metta starts with, can start with a rote practice that you do while you're sitting on the cushion, and it can move to everything that you do in every aspect of your life, in your daily life, whether you're a monastic or a lay person, doesn't matter. Yes, even little bugs and spiders. Okay, friends, so let's end it with some merit. And when we share merit, sharing merit is a very good, um, also I feel, a very good practice of metta. And people have issues with merit, thinking, well, does this really, can we actually give merit to other beings and all this kind of stuff? And really, it doesn't matter one way or the other. What matters is sharing of this merit is actually something that can help you in your mind practice metta for beings. And if none of you have heard a sharing of a merit, you can follow along, listen to this, and maybe you can understand that through these words. So this sharing of merit goes like this. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share in this merit that we've thus acquired, for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. And many things in Buddhism end with the refrain, sadhu, 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 which means excellent. That's how we end. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So friends, thank you for staying late and sitting through this very large sutta that I read very slowly and went through pretty slowly. So I'm glad we pretty much got through it all right on time. And thank you for your questions and your comments and input. So I will be back again next Thursday. Next Thursday we'll do another open, casual Q&A, Dhamma topic discussion. Whatever topics and questions people have, we can discuss it then. So until next time, friends, much metta to you all. Sukhi hotu, which means may you be happy. This is, if you've never heard any Pali before, this can be your first Pali word, because it was my first Pali word. I learned from a monastic here at the Buddha Center. So Sukhi hotu means may you be happy. When you wish beings, you say Sukhi hotu, Sukhi hotu. You pass by beings, you can even say it in your mind. Sukhi hotu, Sukhi hotu. Or you can say may you be happy in your mind. It's the basic practice of metta. Okay, friends, until next time, Sukhi hotu.